Call to order. Please rise for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. Now it's my turn to follow up, so I'm going to ask for a moment of silent prayer, please. Okay, thank you. And again, welcome. Start with roll call. I'm first on the hit list. I'm here. Mr. Smith. Mr. Dove? Here. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Culberson?
Here.
Mr. Stevens? All right. We've got public comment. I've got a few. I'll be calling you up. A reminder, 5 minutes. Is John out there? If John's out there, 5 minutes, John, when it comes your turn, okay? We're going to start with Paul Cromer. Morning, Paul.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Paul Cromer. Frankly, it's hard for me to understand why I'm having to try and talk to you into keeping all of your tax revenue, but I'll give it my best effort. Lansing City did not approach you and inform you of their plan for this RHID. Tim Vandal began emailing the superintendent of USD 469 on April 18, 2024, about his ideas for housing, trying to plant the seed for his RHID. On March 19, 2025, 1 month shy of a year, my wife and John Redden had to come and expose to you what Lansing was doing behind closed doors. If they hadn't brought this to your attention, who knows? Maybe another Tonganoxie split would have made its way through unnoticed. That is why you need to pass this RHID policy, to keep everything out in the light. Last Thursday on the 17th at the end of the Lansing meeting, during the council comments, I heard a city council member state on public record, I have one question. If the school or the county doesn't want to do this, they don't have to, right? We're not forcing anyone to do this if they don't want to, right? His response that he received was, yeah, that's right. Please write this down. KSA 12-5246. KSA 12-5246, Section C. There is no opt-out option. That is a clever wordsmithing attempt to confuse people. There are only two options under the law. A resolution against the RHID due to adverse effect on levying for the county, making the RHID null and void, or do nothing for 30 days and you're in, just like in Tongi. You had an individual student speak last Wednesday and give his truth statement to you about this awesome RHID opportunity. He attempted to dazzle you with numbers that only a fool would pass up. When he stated the price for River Heights Bends RHID had been negotiated down from $24,000 to $21,000, I knew this man had no clue of what he was talking about. It was just rambling at that point. Sadly, it reminded me of Brandon. I really hope that you 5 members are educating yourselves on the issue at hand. I hope that your knowledge of this RHID is not solely based off people's opinions, but guided by the reading of state statutes that pertain to this RHID and looking at the actual numbers. This is not a game of monopoly money. This is real. There is too much to lose with this RHID. Please remember the discussion from your work session 2 weeks ago about the poor condition of many of our bridges and culverts. We don't know when, but someday they will need to be replaced. Will one or more of them have to be shut down before this RHID is passed off? I hope you pass this RHID policy. I'll close with Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you from being my priest. Since you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. April?
Morning, April.
Morning. Moving slow, and I'm probably going to talk slow, so Thank you for 5 minutes. I'm April Cromer. I've been speaking, I'm here for the second time speaking to you about the RHID that's going on in Lansing. My testimony from March 19th still holds. Tax revenue from the RHID district will go towards paying the developer for infrastructure, requiring you to forfeit 37.561 mils. I've talked to elected officials, studied statutes, and analyzed data from the developer from Ad Astra. My husband addressed the discrepancies in their data last week. For instance, they incorrectly applied the mill levy in their feasibility study, which affected both the property tax calculations for the proposed 417 units and the base tax for the annexed landowners, and pointed out that the assessed value was erroneous if it had adhered to Article 11, Section 1 of the Kansas Constitution. I appreciate that your county attorney has the knowledge and you have a good legal team providing appropriate guidance. The city and the attorney for Ad Astra are currently considering an 80-20 solution to provide a new offer. However, once you consider why the negotiation involves tax revenue required by the county for its own projects and for the school district for education. Additionally, it's important to evaluate the financial feasibility study for the developer facing an estimated $21 million to $27 million for infrastructure to build 417 homes on farmland. 2 plots of land off the K7 corridor in Lansing have just been rezoned for commercial and residential, Epic Estates and Delaware Ridge. These developers are not requesting RHID. According to the Lansing housing needs identified in the 2023 Lansing study, with only 151 or 57 participants, this should meet their required need. One developer is also local, making it more reasonable than hiring outsiders who seek to take our tax revenue. Baser, another example, only 3 miles from this McIntyre project, builds houses without subsidies or RHIDs. It's evident that we do have housing within the county. I recognize your intention to implement a policy designed to prevent the county from forfeiting further tax revenue to RHIDs, especially to those that were not adequately presented to you, the Board of County Commissioners. A state representative that I spoke to informed me that he was advised that the proposed RHID was for 10 years. However, upon clarifying that it was actually for 20 years, he did not support the long-term RHID. This illustrates, yes, in fact, there is a lot of misinformation that's out there. Based upon his perspective, he just deemed a 10-year period was sufficient. I will continue to challenge any RHID in USD 469 in the future, though I understand that you need a policy that reflects your attorney's recommendation. Immediate action is required since there is only a 30-day window from the public hearing that's on May 1st. Therefore, I urge you to vote yes on your policy today with the amendment to a 10-year period. Additionally, after May 1st, pass a resolution denying the RHID due to its adverse effect on the county levy, rendering the district null and void according to KSA 12-5246. This situation is not an opt-out scenario as they suggest. You possess the authority to veto this district based on any negative impact on county levying. Protect your county tax and for the needs that you've identified as the governing body. And lastly, I want to say this. I appreciate USD 469 Superintendent Marty Koza for conducting a thorough mill levy study. Please review that study, which shows that USD 469 could lose around $12.8 million in tax revenue through 2045, extending the RHID's life by 3 years beyond my initial projection, which is $7.5 million. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll remain after. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Appreciate your comments. Okay, Rebecca Mahan, am I pronouncing it right? Good morning.
I'm Rebecca Mahan, and I live at 13883 McIntyre Road in Leavenworth, Kansas. Our HIDs have previously slipped through the cracks of this county. Are we going to put a limit on our HIDs in this county? I need you guys to step up to protect your tax-paying citizens. The city of Lansing, basing the need for RHID out of a housing study where 157 people responded, is a complete joke. How can we assess the need for housing off a study where 1.4% of the city's citizens responded? There There are 3 current RHIDs in Tonganoxie. This would make it 4 RHID developments in Leavenworth County. This is around $30 million in lost revenue to the county. What does the county plan to do to make up for the $30 million? And I actually believe it would be more than $30 million in lost revenue, as the property valuations are calculated with a low cap. In a dream world, my property value would only increase every year by 4%. But unfortunately, that is not the case. Leavenworth is currently in a lawsuit wasting taxpayer dollars over a prison that would bring in revenue. Our county is mostly for prisons and churches. I hear the prison is looking to expand. The Kansas City Community College is building a campus that will not be paying taxes. I believe they are a taxing authority, which would bring new taxes to our bill. That's not a great start to making up for lost tax revenue for these RHID developments. We shouldn't allow our county to be used as a personal cash cow for developers. We are cutting our communities short. With all of this development surrounding our area, like the Legends, American Royal, Hot Wheel, Barbie Land, why is it believed that our only option for new development is to burden your loyal tax-paying citizens? There are no policies in place to protect affordable housing. My house is paid off. My household has 2 nice incomes. No one can stop me from buying a couple of these houses. I might be limited on how many houses I can buy, but larger investment companies will not be as limited. It would be really convenient for me to drive my John Deere a little down the road and mow and change out the air filters for these rental properties. I'm asking you, as a Gen Z tax-paying citizen, to reject this RHID. I do not want to be paying off debt for the next 20 years. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Ross Vogel. Morning, Ross.
Good morning, Ross Vogel. Our company is Heartland Housing Partners. Here to speak on the RHID. Our company has worked on over half of the RHIDs in the state of Kansas, well over half of the RHIDs in the state of Kansas. I am working with Riverbend Heights, but also working with other developers in Leavenworth County at the moment, and have worked on past RHIDs in Leavenworth County. One of the things that seems to be lost in these conversations is the dire need for housing in Leavenworth County. That housing study mentioned, that's expert analysis that RDG has done across the state. They did have a public comment component, but there's a huge need here. 560 is the number needed by the end of the decade in Lansing. Leavenworth City is about to do a housing study, or at least we understand. The results, I don't think, will be exactly that high, but they're going to be high as well. That's not to mention Easton or Linwood, which, as far as I know Linwood has very little housing occurring, and I think Easton's probably the same. So let's not the need be lost. I'll give you an example. Salina, which had a huge housing problem, went aggressively to start using RHID. I don't know the exact number. I know I'm working on at least 100 housing starts that are for sale housing starts in Salina, and it's relatively, if you put Lansing and Leavenworth together, relatively the same population. Other thing, housing development and building is hard to do, and it's risky, and the economics aren't very good. Developers wouldn't be asking for these. You'd have developers knocking down the door if it was a great utopia that housing was working here. Simply stated, housing is not working. I think there have been 2 or 3 housing starts in Lansing in the last couple of years. I think they're an average of 8 between 17 and 22. It's a risky business and a difficult business. RHID has been used across the region: Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, Spring Hill, Johnson County, Gardner, Edgerton, Wellsville, Baldwin City, Perry, Eudora, and DeSoto. Eudora has the biggest economic development project in the region, also using or looking at RHID, and Tonganoxie, as you know. There are a couple areas that don't. I'll give you an example. For our company, I won't speak for anyone else. If we have a policy that we think it's going to be difficult to make something feasible, we just don't work in that county. There's a county very close to the metro. You'll notice there's not any cities that I mentioned there. We just choose not to because we know the economics of the project don't work ultimately. So it doesn't. your decision on how you set forth your policy does affect how developers and builders view your communities. And if I can go somewhere else, or a developer I'm working with can go somewhere else and make a project work, I will, and they will. I have two suggestions. I know it's been suggested to go the other way. The first one is on your 15-year presumed adverse effect. I would recommend, once again, we've worked on half of these in the state. I would recommend 20 years. RHID was changed from 15 to 25 years, about 10 years ago. It might have been a little less. I've only seen one project that has been less than 15 years in that time. I've seen another project that could go more than 15 years. It's going to be less than 15 years. But those are real specific instances. The other 50 I've worked on have been more than 15 years. It takes about 17 to 19 years for an RHID to pay off normally in a normal course of action. Now, there are other variables. If you have some type of off-site need, such as a road, a lift station, sometimes it'll go more. I know your policy says no special benefit district, which I don't have an opinion on. But if you have to do a special benefit district, you're going to have to go more than 20 years because normally special benefit districts are 20 years. So I would ask you to go 20 years and then let the work that you're doing in your policy work with local jurisdictions to decide the appropriate amount of time. And not pigeonhole yourself so a developer like me or a consultant like me, which I do both, or a developer or builder goes, I don't really want to work there because I can't make the economics work. So ask you to consider that. The other one is, and I spoke to Mr. Khalil, and I apologize if I butchered your name, the adverse effect for any RHID applying at the same time is just not very clear. I would recommend I'd recommend actually you strike it. You want people who are successful and well-funded, who know how to develop, to be developing near your community. It will have an adverse effect on attracting those people. And it's also just not very clear. Does that mean you can't bring two at the same time? Or could you bring one in 3 months or 3 years? It's just not very clear. Or could you have one in another jurisdiction? It needs to either be clarified or struck. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, when we consider our policy, I do have some questions for
Sure.
him, but you wanted to hold them until...
If you would.
Yeah.
You would. I think there's a couple more too, Mike.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, last one is John Redden. John, you have 5 minutes, not 5 days. Okay? Good morning.
Morning, John.
Okay, so to be honest with you, I'm not a great fan of RHIDs as based on what's already been said this morning. However, since it sounds like we're going to have, it's good to have a policy. And I've read yours, and I just have a few suggested additions for your consideration. The first one, okay, a developer that installs the infrastructure must also complete the housing project. Okay, let me explain that. Okay, so a developer that only creates and then sells improved lots to a house builder should not be eligible to receive RHID funds. The RHID process was established by the Kansas Department of Commerce, mainly to facilitate the population growth in western Kansas for small communities, and so they in those places, the builder or the developer, he would buy the land, he would install the infrastructure, he would frame the house, install the HVAC, paint the house, do everything, landscaping, and then sell the house to the ultimate owner. So he did do the whole thing. It wasn't meant to do what is being done now in eastern Kansas, where you have these money managers. They just sit in their office, they buy the land, and they contract out all the infrastructure work, the sewer, the electric, the internal roads, the water lines, etc., the site lighting, and then they sell the improved lot to a builder for a profit, and then they're out of it. But meanwhile, when they're out of it, then they collect the RHID funds for 20 years. So they made their profit when they sold the improved lot to the builder, and now on top of that, they're making
another $20 million. Is that right? That's what's going on. Okay, so I suggest that perhaps that be included in your policy. All right, the second suggestion is any land parcel in Leavenworth County that is annexed into another government entity in any manner for the purpose of the construction of an RHID subdivision requires the approval of the Leavenworth County Board of County Commissioners through the public hearing process. Okay, so let me explain this one a little bit. All right, so we had this Riverbend Heights, and it was voluntarily annexed from Leavenworth County to Lansing. And so when we concerned citizens attended the hearing, and it was stated that, well, they're putting in these small little lots in this rural area. And it was stated, well, the surrounding people aren't going to like this. And either was the city attorney, the city manager quipped, they don't have to like it. And so that was the end of the meeting, and they voted 5-3 to annex the property. So there, around this Riverbend Heights on three sides is Leavenworth County. We're bearing the brunt of the denigration of this area, not Lansing. And the one side that is on Lansing, those people don't want it. Okay, number 3, all RHID subdivisions in Leavenworth County that involve rezoning of the property must consider the golden factors. Now, the golden factors are, there was a lawsuit in Overland Park, Golden versus Overland Park. It had to do with rezoning of property for development. And there were 8 items, and I'll just highlight a couple, okay, that these factors that should be kept in mind is the character of the neighborhood. Now, this Riverbend Heights is all in a rural area. It's all agricultural, okay? The suitability of the property for the uses to which it is restricted. And, okay, here's one, the extent to which the change will detrimentally affect nearby property. All these homes around this are 2.5 acres or larger, and some are much larger, and now you're putting in 7 houses per acre. So that's a huge change. So, and last of all, the fourth one, okay, here we go. The county reserves the right to rescind an established RHID during any time during the term of the RHID if it is determined by the Board of County Commissioners that the RHID was approved under false pretenses. So let me explain this.
We have 5 minutes? 5 minutes. John?
This is going to be real quick.
John, real quick is 1 minute, okay?
Okay. Let me explain this.
Jeff, you want to help him so he can stay within his 1 minute?
I think he's got it.
You got it? Okay, thank you.
The floor opens up after 1 minute.
Okay. Riverbend Heights. You see this plan? See anything fishy?
No.
Okay, this is the Riverbend Heights RHID. Okay, right here is Delaware Ridge, and right here is Epic Estates. The major pillar of the justification for an RHID before the Kansas Department of Commerce is to establish, to demonstrate that there's a lack of housing, and that lack of housing will persist. Well, so look at this right here. They just rezoned this for development. The idea of these aren't, since the developers haven't produced official plans, even though they did develop this, they still regard this as, well, they say that there's still a persistent lack of housing. So it's really not true. And so if this gets established, and then the next year they put these things through, then the persistent lack of housing just didn't exist. And by the way, that 512 units that he just mentioned at Lansing, that can all be accommodated right here, because right here there's 1,700 units that are being proposed.
Yeah.
All right? So you don't need this.
John.
You don't really need that.
John.
John,
I appreciate it. Well, John, I appreciate your comment. Just keeping it with everybody else in 5 minutes. So thank you for that information, sir. I'm sure we'll be discussing some more of it in a little bit. I think that's all the.
Believe this suggestions here.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
Do you have copies of it?
Pardon?
I don't know if you
We'll
made copies.
we'll make some
I
copies.
didn't make a copy. Yeah, if I could have a copy, but I can.
Yeah, we'll get that.
For your
We'll get
consideration.
that. We'll get that to you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I wrote it down.
Okay. Let's see what I've got going on next here. Okay. Thank you, folks, for all your comments. Next is administrative business. Mark, do you have anything? Commissioners, I have nothing on that part of it. Mr. Dove?
Nope.
Vanessa, you have anything? Jeff? Mike?
I do have a couple things.
Sure.
There's been some questions about the fact that the RHID hearing was delayed until May 1st. The question is, does the tolling of the time frame begin even though the hearing has been tabled, so to speak, to May 1st, or does the tolling begin at the end of the public hearing?
Commissioner, the tolling would begin at the end of the public hearing because no action has been taken on it. They can continue the hearing from date to date, but until there's a vote by the commission, by the city council, this commission would not be told on that decision because it hasn't been made yet.
So per the law on RHIDs, the tolling time has not started.
That's correct.
The second question is, and this is for Mr. Lawfrey, to my knowledge, the county commission, in my time on the county commission, 6 years, we've approved a tax abatement policy, but we have never granted a tax abatement per se, except for outbuildings or buildings that were destroyed for natural disasters or fires. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Board of County Commissioners, I'm not aware of ever initiating a tax abatement other than for the disaster relief, like you just stated, and certainly not since 2017. That's as long as I've been here. So the tax abatements that occurred, and I think you heard a couple of the people mention RHIDs that have been approved. So the cities have approved tax abatements. The cities have approved it. So in some cases, the county has the ability to weigh in, and in some cases they don't. But in the RHID situation, we do. But the ones that were approved in Tonganoxie by the Tonganoxie City Council, that was when the RHID system changed to where it was applicable. First time coming into the county. I know that's been long enough ago that I don't recall the notification if we received it, but at the time, I don't believe the county councilor at that time believed there was any action for us to take.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, with that, we'll move on to consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments on it? You got to comment? Okay, I'll start the roll call. Aye.
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 Okay, thank you, folks. Moving right along, we're going to go to formal board action. Consider a motion to approve the supplemental agreement for the Safe Streets for All implementation grant with Kinley Horn. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Commissioners. Today for your consideration is a supplemental agreement with Kinley Horn to facilitate the necessary documentation and drilling down of the locations that we intend to apply for Safe Streets for All implementation grants. I generally don't read the analysis, but I will read most of this verbatim here today. With the removal of the DEI criteria in the project at the federal level, And for the grant applications, Leavenworth County is in a very competitive position to pursue the implementation and construction grants. We were actually the first county, the only county that was awarded a SS4A study as a part of the very first funding opportunity that occurred under the bipartisan infrastructure law. So currently we are the only county that I'm aware of in the state of Kansas that has completed and approved a Vision Zero action plan, and that is the required first step in order to get implementation funding for a project. And so what implementation is just construction, actual construction grants. And so what we have and what we score best on in the county, the projects that are eligible, we can bundle two projects together. Those projects would be located on County Routes 1 and 2, south of K32 Highway, connecting into the two Kansas River crossings. Our application would focus on the high accident rates and the economic impact of the Panasonic plant and the developments that have occurred in the DeSoto area. With that being the largest infrastructure privately funded project in the state of Kansas's history, we are going to write a narrative that focuses on developing these rural roads into the properly designed roadways that would be needed for our current traffic volumes, as they weren't designed for current traffic volumes, and they definitely aren't designed for the additional traffic that may be generated over the next 5 to 10 years as that Panasonic plant comes online. Currently, we've had in the past 8 years, I believe it was, 5 fatality accidents, 8 serious injury accidents, and 110 other accidents along these two corridors. Kimley Horn, they did complete the SS4A study. That was an expensive study that made us eligible. Of that study, we only paid 5% of the total cost of that study. It was a $380,000 study. The federal government covered 80% of the cost. The state of Kansas, we applied for additional funding from them. They covered 10%, and we paid 10%. So of that study, we did pay 10%. This is an additional cost to drill down the CAD schematics using AutoCAD and create the illustrations that go along with the production of a 12-page report that is necessary to have the construction estimates at a level of clarity necessary for the application. Once we've applied for the application, we can't change our funding amount, and so we need to be fairly accurate in what we're doing and what that will cost at the time of construction. Currently, we don't have the staff or the software to facilitate that development. We have reached out preemptively in order to see what support we could garner for this project, and we have received and have copies of both U.S. Senators Moran and Marshall have provided letters of support for this application. We have also received notification back from the Department of Commerce that they're going to sign a letter of support for the project, and we've received notification back that that KDOT, on behalf of Secretary Reed, is going to sign a letter of support for the application as well. In my emails with Secretary Reed, he did direct us to apply for Build Kansas funding for this application as well. Build Kansas funding is a $200 million set-aside that the state of Kansas created in 2022 in order to help local communities fund federal projects. And so we will apply for those fundings to cover our 20% or 30% match requirement for the construction of this project. So if we were awarded the project and we are successful in getting through the Build Kansas grant, this would be a 100% funded project from a construction perspective, which is a great opportunity for the county. We would still have to pay for some of the design costs and the acquisition of the additional right-of-way. So it's not a free project, but it would be the design and the acquisition. It would still be in excess of $1 million, I would assume. It would cost to relocate the utilities, acquire the property, and have the project designed. But the application is going to be somewhere in the $9 to $12 million range, of which hopefully we can get 100% funding. We could end up possibly not receiving that matching grant from the state of Kansas, but currently I don't think that they have nearly spent the $200 million as the previous administration's criteria focused on areas of extreme poverty, and these are extremely hard grants to get through. And so the number of communities applying for the funding is very limited in the state of Kansas. As we get through if we don't successfully get this grant under the first application cycle that's upcoming in 6 weeks, we would then use this same information to reapply for the future funding cycles. As we move through future funding cycles, the likelihood of us getting the grant may get watered down over time, or it may not, because we've applied previously and they may give us credit for being for continuing to pursue the grant. But the Mid-America Regional Council and a number of other communities have received study grants since we have, and so there will be additional funding coming online, or additional communities coming up that will be eligible for this funding in the future. If the board has any questions about this, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Any questions? Go ahead, Mike.
I just wanted to, the second paragraph you didn't read, but I think it's worth reading. We will be focused on 2 factors, including the 5 fatalities, 8 serious injury, life-altering, and 110 total crashes that have occurred over the past 8 years with the current traffic volumes and increased volume traffic that will result from the 13,000 plus jobs created by the largest economic development project in Kansas history. So this kind of dovetails with our discussion of the CIP we had a couple weeks ago, is when we're making decisions on roads, we have to focus on traffic counts, where the economic development is occurring, and safety. And that's mostly what we've done the last few years. Most of our projects have been accident-prone areas.
And the fatalities bother me.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
So this is great if we can get it.
Yeah, I think it's...
Commissioners, I'd like to point out, too, that this process actually started several years ago when we did the study. We were required to get eligible for this. We were required to do a study, and so the commission, I don't remember when they approved that, but several years ago, the commission, 2021, so the commission approved the Public Works Department to go out and get that study done, and that's why we're ahead here now, because you approved that then, and other communities have not had that opportunity.
That's great. That's good news. Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the supplemental agreement for the Safe Streets for All implementation grant with Kimberly Horn.
Motion, I'll second it. Any discussion? Sounds like a good program. I'll start voting. Aye.
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 All right, very good.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, consider a motion to approve the adoption of policy to evaluate, analyze, promote reinvestment housing incentive district. Lay it on us.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is the updated policy that was with the changes that were made after the work session that we had, I think, two weekends ago, or 2 Wednesdays ago. The specific changes that were asked for by the Commission were the Commission wanted a specific method of notification, and so that was added into the policy. So that was that notice to the county of the proposed RHID shall be certified mail upon return receipt requested to the Board of County Commissioners no later than 15 days before the public hearing and 45 days prior to the termination date of the county's 30-day objection period. That's at the top of page 4 on the RHID. That language was modeled off of what notifications required under the TIF process in the statute. It's modified a little bit because there's some different steps in how the documents occur in the TIF model, but that was the certified mail was taken from the TIF statute. The other changes were the commissioners asked for the inclusion of the legislative intent, and so that's the first paragraph in the RHID policy. That inclusion of the legislative intent, I took that from the language of the statute and an executive summary that was written by the Legislative Council in Topeka.
Thank you.
And so I hope that gives us some clarity of what the legislature was thinking. That was the best I could do on the legislative intent.
You understand what the legislature is thinking?
That's a loaded question.
Go ahead.
I did the best I could to try to gather it together. The kind of brief summary of that paragraph is that the legislature found that there was a serious shortage of decent, safe, and sanitary housing, which persons and families of low and moderate income can afford, and that was a danger to the citizens of the state of Kansas. The third change that was made was it was requested that we add some language in that this align with the Leavenworth County Comprehensive Plan, which is under Section C, additional considerations. That line was added to the policy, and then there was under subsection E, the need for public assistance. There was a request to add some language about the feasibility of the project and the economic development impact of any given project.
All right.
Other than that, there weren't any substantial changes made to the
I
policy.
think we got some conversation we want to have on that right now with the county commissioners. Who wants to start it off? Mike, go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
Lead the way.
Well, just before we start, the change for the notification, that complies with the statute, and we're allowed to make that requirement.
So the RHAD statute itself has no specific language about notification. That was why I felt that we could make a change asking for that,
that makes sense.
how we specifically want to be notified.
Yeah, because I think that's a definite issue that we want to definitely be notified
Yes.
of these things.
Yeah.
Then I had some questions for Mr. Ron. You don't mind?
It's Ross Vogel.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
had no worries whatsoever.
I wrote down Ron, but
Well,
it's Ross. It's Ross.
close enough.
Sorry about that.
I've been called much worse.
I won't call you those
Thank you.
names. How many? You said that you worked with a lot of these RHIDs across the state. Do you know how many across the state there are?
I really don't. I don't really. I've never counted how many.
How many have you worked with?
Like 50.
50. And I assume that since the law has changed, that's making it like it was originally focused on western Kansas and the smaller communities, and now I'm just giving you my understanding, and now the law is allowing it to expand.
The the statute was originally written, I believe, in 1998, but I don't remember exactly. There have been some changes over time. I wouldn't agree that it's significantly changed. Originally, it did have the 7 or 8 largest communities weren't allowed to use RHID. 2022, it opened up to Topeka, and then in 23, it opened up to Lenexa, Overland Park, and so on and so forth. The laws remain the same as far as who could use RHID. What's occurred, and the first projects I did were in our western Kansas, Garden City, Liberal. What's occurred and what we could see occurring is the housing issues that they were experiencing out there have moved across the state and moved across the country. And about 2016, our company anyway thought, there's going to be a lot more of these closer to the metros, and there have been, not because of the statute, but because of market forces. For instance, since COVID, the development of subdivision lot, the cost has doubled since COVID. And that's part of the reason it went from 15 to 25. Pardon?
Said we love COVID.
Yeah, well, and generally that time. It kind of started ramping up in about 18, but generally in that time. So it was much more market conditions than it was any change to the statute.
So, do you consider a $300,000 house to be affordable housing?
I work across the state. It is about as inexpensive as you can build that is also desirable on a for sale house. We do have, you asked a question last meeting. The state legislature has been very aggressive about not just RHID, but other direct, there's some direct grants and also some what's called the Housing Investor Tax Credit, because housing just didn't work. And they felt that it was an economic development need, and so they put a lot of money towards housing because it doesn't work. So to answer your question, it is shocking to me, having grown up in Galena, Kansas, that a $300,000 house is, I use the word attainable, not affordable. But yes, that is about as low with incentives as you can do it. If you don't have incentives, I believe you're a realtor, if I'm not mistaken, it's $350, $400, $500 is a starting house.
So you just dovetailed on to what I was going to say. Is, as looking at the real estate, if I had a young family coming in, maybe a teacher at Lansing or firefighters in that income level, I would be taking them into Leavenworth and looking at homes that are in 2,000 square foot, older homes, but really very livable homes. And I'm looking at the fact that that's within easy driving distance of Lansing and is more affordable than these houses that we're going to incentivize. So what would your response be to that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. My response would be, and I don't know the exact number, so I don't want to hear it in another meeting. I think there's 7 houses on the market in Lansing right now. I don't even know the price, but there are 7 houses on the market. So yes, that's a wonderful idea.
Well, that's in Lansing, but Leavenworth is right next to Lansing.
Well, let's talk about both. I can't get an answer on the number of developable, buildable subdivision lots there are in either community. I think there are hardly any. So you have a shortage of available homes. You have younger people that, quite frankly, don't want an older home. Or let's suppose they do buy a home for a 2,000 square foot house, no matter what it is right now, and could be up quite, let's call it $250. Well, I bet it needs $50 or $80 or $100,000 in work, is the reality. So that is a nice idea. I think part of what you see in projects like this, and we see it over and over and over, and this is, once again, let's look at the housing issue, and I'm really glad you asked. You see a lot of the people that are in that 2,000 or 2,500 square foot house that are ready to move out, ready to downsize. They don't have anything available. And one of the things we hear often, and the legislature is talking about, build new housing so people that want to downsize can downsize. And then for that family that maybe does find a 2,200 square foot house that's 3 or 4 bedrooms, that was built in 1972, they can move to that house. But those people in that house right now don't have an option, so they're not going to sell. I don't know the numbers in Leavenworth. We could obviously look it up. There's just not any available. And you mentioned last time about Baser. Baser's just a different animal. They're fortunate to be geographically advantaged and have great schools. And then the rest of the county has great schools.
So I just have one last question.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
As a governing body or as the county commission, when I'm asked a question about the fact that I have a developer down the road, 7 miles, 10 miles, 5 miles, and they are not asking for incentives and are apparently developing very well, and we've had lots of these, why would I want to offer an incentive just to see that you have housing in one location? Maybe that location is not where people want to live. Maybe that's not favorable. Maybe the market's not driving people to that location. Why would I want to use government to incentivize them to live somewhere they don't want to live unless we use taxpayer dollars to incentivize that when they can live within easy driving distance of that location?
I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. If you're talking about Baser, those houses are often more expensive than what we're talking about here. If, as a government official in Leavenworth County, I would be very, very, very concerned about the lack of activity in Lansing and Leavenworth, not to mention Easton and Linwood in housing. I mean, less than 2 or 3 housing starts in a community of 11,000 in the last 2 years. The market. What's occurred in my view is that there is demand for housing. This is not a demand issue. This is a supply side issue. And Leavenworth County is a competitive environment to attract developers and builders who want to build here. And I mentioned when I talked earlier, development is very risky and very difficult to do. And you're going to go to the place where you find the best opportunity and you mitigate your risk above all else. And really, RHID is a risk mitigation tool, in my opinion, more than anything else. It's mitigating the developer's risk.
Yeah, put the risk on the taxpayer to pay for the infrastructure.
There is no risk on the taxpayer because 100% of zero is zero.
But if you had a developer, that's what I'm saying. You have developers throughout the county that are not being tax exempted, and that money all goes directly to the resources of the county. We have almost half of our county is tax exempted. So every time we look at exempting more property, that's a real concern.
I do not disagree one bit. I would disagree with your first statement. You have one community that has succeeded at housing, and that's Baser. You have another community that has done pretty well at housing, and that's Tonganoxie. But look at those projects. Those are RHID incentive projects. You have two communities that are large that the supply side market has said, at this point, we're not interested. And the developers that were here in the past are no longer here, no longer developing, or are developing somewhere else.
But Tonganoxie's not has development other than RHID as well.
It has some, but not a ton.
Yes, it has, and over the years it's had a lot.
That's not today. Well, if you want to use that example, Lansing had a ton from 1995 to 2007. It has none.
I know, I was a city manager, but the reason Lansing had that is because the local developer jumped into Lansing and started building 100 homes for about 4 or 5 years when I was a city manager. That developer went south. Where did that developer go? Who's a local developer? He went to Baser. Now, my comment on this is, this is a lot of funds. Property tax and stuff like that is killing us. We're trying to grow our communities. There's no doubt that this county, especially Lansing, where I served a lot of years, needs affordable housing. The problem I've got is how do we get there without taking away some funds that we desperately need in this county? So that is my concern. I am not going to disagree that we don't need it. I've seen it come in for a lot of time, but I just don't know right now how we get there. But I just can't see putting it on the backs of people that. I appreciate you coming out to this area, but there's some things we're going to have to work through. And the first thing we're going to work through is hopefully, in my opinion, getting this policy started so at least we have a policy, even if we have to change it down the line, because one of the key things is county's the last one to get told. Now we won't be. Surprise. So that we have people calling us and coming in that we weren't even totally aware of that. So we're fixing those things with that right now. How it's going to turn out, I don't know. It's up to these other county commissioners. But I do know a local developer who was building a lot of homes, and he decided to go south for whatever reason, and that's where it changed. So when you compare that, who didn't ask for anything, who's been building this county for years, you got to sit back and look at this. Now, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate you coming out here. Commissioners, do y'all have anything else on this you want to talk about?
Thank you so much.
I have.
Go ahead.
I'm at loss here as to why the government would jump in and incentivize developers, and the reason for that is that then we're picking the winners and the losers. And if the winners are going to be incentivized, then how is that incentivization? How does that really help us as taxpayers? I don't see that really benefiting us because we're taking it from one hand and we put in another, or you're taking it from our citizens' hand and put it in your pocket 15 years from now, or up to 15 years from now.
20 was likely.
Or correct, 20.
Yeah, I'm not the developer on any of these, but once again, I do have my own, but none of these that we're talking about in Leavenworth County. It's a question I ask myself every day. My politics probably wouldn't say that this would be what we have to do, but in 2012,
what would it
my
be?
politics don't matter, by the way. Go ahead, sorry.
What would it be? You said it wouldn't matter. What would it be?
Sorry, clarify your question.
You made a statement that it wouldn't matter, and your politics really wouldn't matter.
Well, the question the city of Lansing, anyway, has decided that housing is one of their most important issues that they're focused on. And unfortunately, and this is not just Lansing, this is all across the state in the 50 communities that I've worked in and many more that I haven't worked in, we don't have a better solution. Quite simply, the economics of housing do not work in most of our communities in Kansas. And this is the best solution we can come up with. I mean, quite frankly, housing, it's add, subtract, multiply, and divide. It's not overly complicated, but if the add, subtract, multiply, and divide don't add up, the supply side, like the developer you spoke at, is going to go where it does add up.
Yes.
And what you're leaving yourself with in Lansing and Leavenworth and Easton and Linwood is no development because it's not working economically. Unfortunately, and you as the leaders have to make a decision whether housing is more important, and I know your tax dollars are important too. The development of housing and the economic development of these communities is more important than the taxes. And unfortunately, what I've said, and I don't even know if it's the right thing to say, if we decide housing is a problem, we've got to solve today's problem today. And housing is a problem.
I get a lot more calls about property taxes than I get about I can't find a house.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Lansing's market's very tight. When the military moves out, those houses are sold within 30 days because we have a lot of military out there. That's not the issue I'm talking about. I know there's a need. I'll go back to what I just said. It's how do we get there without causing problems to this county or the schools or anything like that. So that's something we're going to have to work on. Anyway, Jeff, do you have anything on this at all? Anybody else? Okay, appreciate you taking the time.
Thank
you.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
Commissioners, before you vote, if you choose to vote this time, I do want to clarify and apologize. The clean version of this policy did not make it into the packet. What you have is a partial red line with not all of the track changes even turned on, so I take responsibility for that and apologize. But if you do pass the policy, I want to clarify it would be the clean version, so you're not seeing partial red lines or some of the typos that are in there.
Okay.
Just
You know,
same language.
An attorney didn't want to put something in a package. You got to be kidding me. You guys won't stop putting stuff in packages. Do I have any more concerns on this? If not,
can we discuss?
Absolutely, that's what we're here for.
A while? Does anybody
You
else
want to get the motion on the floor and then we'll discuss?
We can do that too. That'd probably be easier to go. Go ahead, Mike.
I move that we approve the adoption of a policy to evaluate and analyze the proposed reinvestment housing incentive district.
Second. Okay, discussion.
It's all you.
You sure?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
You have the floor.
That's it. That's right.
I have taken some time to make sure to meet with the cities that are involved in the county, the majority of them, not all of them. So I met with Lansing, Josh Gensler, Tim Vandal, City Council Dan Clemens, and then I went out and met with, Tonganoxie's city manager.
George.
Yeah.
Rockledge.
Baser, manager, and deputy. They all have different names, but basically same thing. So, and then I met with Leavenworth yesterday, about 4 folks from Leavenworth City. So I guess I would just like us to discuss, are we wanting to keep the policy that we have? Do we want to amend it in any way? Lansing said similar things that we heard today, that if it's 100% the 15 years they can do, if we're splitting monies up, an 80-20 or something, then they think it would be 20 years. They were really the only ones to weigh in on that. And then we have, I don't know what you guys have received. I've received quite a lot of input from people that live around the subdivisions currently. And then people throughout the county and even in other counties that just don't like RHID at all, don't want us to have a policy, this hard no for Leavenworth County kind of thing. And then obviously we heard some recommendations today that, maybe we should go even more conservatively to 10 years. I think the state one, like we talked about, is 25 years. So I just didn't know if you guys are happy with what we have or if you want to amend it.
I think we needed to get something started. And like anything else, just my opinion is When I was doing this years ago, 10 years was usually the max. But I think it's open to how we want to set it up. The county commissioners have the final word no matter what's in front of us. But I think it's more important to me, unless the county commissioners disagree, is to have some policy in place immediately so we can control a little bit of this and we can always adjust this. Good comments were made. We got copies of them. Mike's made some things on this that I'm fully need to take a look at. I just want to get this thing moved forward since we're on a time crunch because this thing's moving. But I've talked to a few people like you, and I said they've made it very clear how they feel to me about it, both sides of the party.
Yeah.
So I personally would like to get this approved, and then if we have to come back and redo it and like that, we will have time to do that down the line because if we have to, you go at 30 days, Misty, is that what the whole catch is on this timeline?
Correct.
Okay, but
After
if we do
the
this
public
one now, we're good, and we can always come back if we see something like anything else, any law of the land. When you see there's something there you need to tweak, I know Mark doesn't like that word, that you need to tweak, we can come back and tweak it. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's your policy. You can change it and apply it. And the whole crux, I think, of the policy is encouraging notification and working with the commission early on. And these are just providing notice that these are factors you can and will consider, but each one will have to be determined case by case because they're all going to be different. And these are just guiding principles of your analysis as they come forward.
And by leaving it the way it is now, it gives the county commissioners a little more flexibility to make those decisions. But at any time that the county commissioners think that we need to tighten up, we can. My thing was about notification, like you said, and getting this on the books pretty quick. So I'd ask like we go ahead and get this approved for now, and then Jeff, you got something on this?
Well, I was just going to piggyback off of what Missy just said. So as long as if an RHID was presented to a city and the city didn't agree or there was a conflict in the county's policy, we could change that policy on the fly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think what concerned me more than anything when I realized we didn't have a policy. And it's kind of new. I never used it out in Lansing because even though it's a policy that we were saying, but the population and things were we're not the same. So I'd like to see this get approved, and if we have to have some more conversation.
Because this isn't to decide whether a city gets an RHID or not. This is just to include us in the conversation when they do pop up, and because all these are going to be dealt with the cities.
That's right.
We're not going to deal directly with any of these RHIDs. So.
We just need to have the city have a CR policy too.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
So I read the policy as more of a recommendation, kind of setting some hopefuls around things, but it doesn't specifically say if someone comes to us with this or that, they're denied, is how I read it. So I just wanted to make sure that was the intent of the county.
I don't know if you want to tighten it up too much. I think when it comes down to county commissioners, all of us are elected, and we hear from people when we don't make the right decision by them. I think that gives us some flexibility. Again, I just think we just need to have a policy in place to make sure the county commissioners are aware of what's going on. Yeah, Mike?
I feel like we need the policy in place to give due process to the developers and to give due process to the communities. And once you have the policy, and I also encourage the school districts to establish a policy on RHIDs so that they also are giving due process. So this allows us to set the parameters of what we believe should occur. And a few of the earlier RHIDs we didn't feel like we were notified or involved with enough. So this establishes. You've got to notify us. It has to be by registered mail. What the procedures will be. No, this policy doesn't say we're saying yes or no. I will tell you, and I think since we're doing open discussion, my constituents and my district and what I'm getting feedback from is I will not close the door on this, but I am getting a lot of opposition when it comes to abating taxes because of how much people have to pay in property taxes. And I think we've got to be very, very careful. I know the argument that, this is a piece of farmland now and it's paying $90 and now it's going to become, what they project. But if you think about what that could be if it didn't have the abatement and it was developed by another developer, then all of that money would go towards reducing other people's property taxes and bearing the burden. So my position is going to be very conservative on abating property taxes.
Okay. We good?
Yeah, I like to try to get things right.
Oh, absolutely. I've noticed you're
So I
very
just wanna
thorough.
make
You asked,
sure
a lot,
that
you asked a lot of good questions, Vanessa.
rush through it. So
I think we got a motion second already. I think you guys said. Are we good? Okay with that? Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
We did because we did that again.
I know we get down the line like that. I forget, Mike. Okay, I'll start the voting. Aye.
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 Okay, very good. Mr. John, thank you for putting that together for us. Next item is consider a motion to approve Resolution 2025-13, altering the boundaries of Rural Fire District 1 of Leavenworth County, Kansas, to include only Delaware Township and High Prairie Township.
Commissioners, this is the final step in removing the city of Lansing from Fire District Number 1. Statutorily, this is a step we have to take. We've already passed a previous resolution. It was published in the paper. The requisite time period has passed. There's been no protest petition, so at this resolution, you are simply declaring the new boundaries of Fire District 1 to include Delaware Township and High Prairie Township. Next week, you'll see it again for Delaware, and the following week, you'll see it for High Prairie.
Okay, that's what I was just going to ask. It's like, why are we doing this now? Okay, I get it.
Following the procedure, yeah. Any questions or comments to staff?
No.
Then after you get these passed, then you're going to proceed with determining what you need to do to unwind the entire.
There will be further discussion. We'll probably discuss that in executive session. The statute is clear that even the time frame of this, it's very prescribed of how long we have to put in the paper, how long we must wait, and then this is the final step, and that's why you're seeing sequentially, and then we'll have another discussion about final steps.
Right.
Motion.
Yeah, I need a motion, please.
Motion to approve Resolution 2025-13, altering the boundaries of Rural Fire District Number 1 of Leavenworth County, Kansas, to include only Delaware Township and High Prairie Township.
Second. Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not. I'll start the roll call. Aye.
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 All right. Very good.
That was a long time coming.
Yes, it has been. Ever since I've been sitting up here. Okay, next one. Morning, Amy. Next case DEV 24097 and 098, preliminary and final plat for Crosby Addition Number 2.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you is case DEV 2497 and 98, which is a request for a preliminary and final plat of the properties located at 16042 and 16120 Linwood Road. This is a replat of the Crosby Addition, Lot 1 of that, and then an adjacent tract that is unplatted, so it requires platting both preliminary and final. The general request was to move a shared boundary line to allow for more land on Lot 1. However, because of the lot configuration and the existing road frontage, that required a lot depth to lot width exception, which the Planning Commission did approve on their April meeting on an 8-0 vote. There were a few other concerns raised. I just wanted to let you know that one of those was there are existing bridges on these parcels. Because they are not located within the public right-of-way, they were not reviewed as part of our review process. Those are private bridges, so we left those alone. In addition, the access points, KDOT was contacted because Linwood Road is a KDOT monitored road, and they are allowed an existing access on the west parcel as a emergency exit only, but the state is still fine with that arrangement, and that is reflected in the plat. So if you have any other questions about the plat, let me know. Happy to answer them.
Commissioners? Mike, Jeff? Okay, then entertain a motion then.
Move that the proposed final plat as outlined in case DEV 24097 and 098 is compliant with county zoning and subdivision regulations, and move the proposed final plat be conditionally approved and accepted by this board, subject to the conditions set forth in the staff report and as adopted by the Planning Commission.
Have a motion to have a second?
Second.
Second. Any more discussion? All right, I'll call a roll, starting with myself. Aye.
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 Very good. Next one is Resolution 2025-14, approving the vacation of a portion of the plat of the Stories Edition subdivision. Vacating.
All right. This request is to vacate a portion of the Stories Edition, which is a subdivision that was approved in the late 1800s. This subdivision is located within the county. And per Kansas Statute 582613 and subsequent statutes, a property owner is able to request a vacation of a plat as long as it's outside of city jurisdiction and that they can prove that the adjacent property owner's rights will not be violated and that all utilities located within the vacation area will not be impacted at all. The public hearing was held at the Planning Commission at their April meeting. The Planning Commission found that the request does not infringe on any of the neighboring rights, more specifically that they are only requesting a vacation of the existing lots within the property that they own, and that the utilities that are located within the vacation area are being accommodated. Specifically, the water line, the Water District has indicated that they will be moving it along Bepler Road right-of-way, and the applicant has indicated if additional land is needed for that water line, they would be willing to grant it. And then they also are providing an easement, and that legal description was included in the application for an existing power line and a telephone line. So per state statute, you guys are the final entity to approve this request or deny it. That resolution has also been provided for you guys as part of this process. So if you have any questions.
May I get just something? When underneath it says consider a motion that the vacation request deadline case DV 2512. Should that be 2514?
It is 12.
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
So the heading's wrong in our heading says 25.
Well, I think you're looking at the difference is one's a resolution and one's a case number. So really what you have to do is approve the resolution.
That's a good point. Thank you, Mike. Okay, any questions? Comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so this is in my district. They contacted me in the very beginning of this, so I kind of walked them through it, so there isn't anything to worry about.
You okay
outstanding with this? All the adjacent owners have been contacted.
Everybody okay with the questions? Okay, I'll take a motion.
I move. Let's see.
Which one? You're getting ahead of us.
I know.
One that's on the agenda,
You sound like me over this.
approval of resolution 2514.
Use 12 or 14? Actually, it's 12, 13, and 14.
Yeah, yes,
okay.
yeah, it's case 12,
okay.
resolution 14. Got it.
So I'd like to make a motion that the vacation request as outlined in case DV 25-12 complies with KSA 58-2613 and does not cause public to suffer loss or inconvenience, and that no private rights will be injured and endangered by the vacation based upon recommendations of the Planning Commission and findings set forth in the staff report. I move to approve Resolution 2025-14, the vacation request subject to the property rights of public utilities, right-of-way, and easements for public service facilities currently in existence and use.
Second.
Catch your breath now, Joe. Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Looks like it's straightforward to me. I'll start. Aye.
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 Aye. Very good. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Presentation discussions. We've got quarterly reports. Planning and zoning. Come on down.
All right. I will do my best to go through this. John sends his apologies for not being here today.
I understand why.
P&Z has seen some pretty good numbers in regards to our building permits. In quarter one, we saw 19 single-family home permits pulled in the county, which is a substantial increase from the quarter one of 2024. In addition, we had one ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit permit, and then 33 accessory building permits. I believe those are all residential, which was also a substantial increase from 2024. Additionally, we have had 35 development cases. So development cases are like subdivision actions, rezones, special use permits, TSUPs, things of those natures, which 7 of those were plats. That's about the same as 2024 of last year, so we are being consistent with the growth that occurred in 2024. However, we did note that the rezoning requests were down this year, so it appears that developers are finding land with the suitable zoning for the type of development they would like to subdivide. Other than that, staff has also been working on projects such as building codes, prepping for the comprehensive plan review, the annual review that happens every year, and then the adjoining language amendment that we always bring with you guys as a part of that process. So if you have any
just a couple things on this real quick. Is last few years since we made some changes, y'all brought some changes to county commissions, made it easier for us to get these things done, and it dictated, or it shows by the way of the houses, they're single-family residential homes. When you're tracking along with what Baser's doing, you're really doing a good job. So it's a need, and a lot of people are moved out in the county, which I'm very glad to see. And it seems that when you work better with people and you take all the restrictions out of their way and let them use their land, it just seems like you get, this is the kind of results you get. So that was just my statement. Does anybody have anything for Amy?
I just have one.
Go ahead,
Isn't
sure.
really on this. I had a question. I had a question came up with a constituent. Cross-access easements in a subdivision. If you build up to county standards, what's the process for them eventually being considered for being brought into the county system?
You mean a cross-access easement roadway that was built to county standards?
Yes.
It is my understanding that this board has always made the clear distinction that if it was approved as a cross-access easement and then later somebody wanted to make that roadway a public roadway, that the property owners would have to prove that it was built to county standards, and there would be most likely some sort of review of that roadway before the county would entertain accepting that as public roadway. That has always been my understanding.
And is there a time frame on that?
I don't believe there is a time frame on that. I guess that would occur once a petition or a request has been received by the county to make that road a public roadway.
Okay, that was just a question that came up.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Thank you. Made it easy for you this time.
Appreciate it.
But there's always next time.
Mike. EMS, come on down, Jamie. Just had to say it. Morning, Jamie.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Joe.
Submitted EMS report and Health Department reports to you. Just to highlight a few things. Obviously, first, as always, budget. We're operating appropriately within expenditures of our budget. Use repeat collection is up currently for the year for the first quarter. So I hope that continues down the path that it's going. Runs, statistics are the next few pages that I have in the report for you. We are on track, still averaging right around that 36 calls mark per day. One thing I want to highlight, and I apologize, is on page 4, vehicle maintenance, we are not at 97%. That did not get updated from the year-end report of last year. We are currently at about 22%.
I was wondering about that. Are you about to run out of money, son?
So vehicle maintenance is running about 22%, which is appropriate for where we should be at for the year. The 2025 unit that was scheduled to come in this spring has been delayed. With the hurricanes that occurred, unfortunately the factory was affected by that, so it delayed out units and such. So we're looking probably to receive that late summer, early fall for the 2025. And then we'll put our 2026 to fall, winter of 2026, and so on for 2027. Just a few updates. Again, we remained full staff for the first time that I can report for the first quarter. So again, when I reported in January, we hired all of the positions there at the end of the year for 2024. We remained all those positions through 2025. It was an administrative quarter for us. That's when we renew a lot of our licensures and Board of Pharmacy, DEA, Kansas Board of EMS. We've just completed all of those. The new LifePak 35s that we received and replaced out, which is the cardiac monitor, defibrillator, kind of the main piece of equipment that's out on the ambulances, have been deployed. They've been in service for the last month. So far, knock on wood, we have not had any issues. With the actual defibrillator, there are some software stuff that we're still working through because it goes to the cloud. You have to pull it down. Some of those type of things we're working through. One of the items that was brought up was fire department's and medical director. I want to give a little bit of update on that. I was able to work with the fire chiefs and the medical director to come to a resolution. I'm working with legal now to formulate an agreement, if you will, for the fire departments to come on, and they would all be paying the same amount of money.
Well, Jamie, why don't you, since not everybody knows, why don't you tell them what the issue was that was being discussed?
Sure. The issue was, as fire departments were coming on, let me back up. Every fire department that provides emergency medical services along with their fire department in response has to have a medical director in which the technicians operate under. They have to, their license is actually under a medical director. The departments were signing individual contracts with the medical director, and as they were coming on, they were being charged per person. So it fluctuated per department on how much they were being charged and such. I met with the medical director and came to a resolution, if you will, that all of the departments, regardless of call volume and personnel and such, they're in response with us. It's a combined effort, and they are all on board with, in lack of better terms, it's $1,500 charge per year is what we come to.
Instead of having a fluctuation that we were seeing all
it's
over
across the board now, and we're going to go to that. And the fire chiefs were ecstatic that I spoke with and whatnot, that we were able to come to that agreement. So I think we can, as soon as we can get through some of the language that needs to be in an agreement for them, I think we'll put that to bed.
So I'm glad you took the lead on that. Appreciate that.
So that's kind of off the table. And then again, the next quarter is kind of training mode for us. We have a lot of EVOC training. We've had some tabletops, and then we also have some live full-scale exercise that we're going to be participating in the next quarter. So with that, I'll entertain anything, question for the next part.
Can you talk about the tracking software that you have currently?
The tracking software for?
Well, I guess it would be for
what I talked about yesterday.
Oh, okay. For the epidemiology stuff? Okay. That was asked during a mitigation. I will be bringing that up. But we're not seeking any new software. That's not anything that our health department or from my office that I'm requesting. We operate under KDHE's EpiTrack software, which is the requirement for reporting of all reportable diseases in the state of Kansas. So anything that is a reportable disease under statute that's required, and there's several that are 4-hour reportables, obviously, and that's everything from foodborne, biological, you name it. Those are in there. TB cases, somebody gets a foodborne illness at a restaurant, is reported into the state. It gets put into the EpiTrack software, and then it comes back to our department to do some of those investigations as to what happened. Are there more individuals that are sick from it? Is it something we need to try to look into containing? So we don't pay anything for that software. We don't do anything that we are outside of the requirements that I am under state law.
So can we talk about how it would have been applied during COVID?
How tracking?
Yeah.
That was a whole different ballgame when it came into tracking and how things were disseminated. So that was a one-off compared to, that was a pandemic response, and certain things that we were having to do during the COVID response is not necessarily the response on a day-to-day. So the tracking, the patient tracking that happened during COVID is different than what we would do on a TB case. And so the requirements that the state and federal were requiring during that and how they were using that information was completely different.
Was there software involved in that tracking?
They used EpiTracks during that to enter the individuals into that. But the requirements were different on what we had to do with that information during that time.
So was it used to track individuals' movements, or there was?
No, there's no tracking of movements. When you're talking about tracking, disease tracking is epidemiology. I mean, that's the term for epidemiology. You have to find out what that disease is, where the individual was, if they traveled, where did they get it from, and then how it's going to be spread, and who did they spread it to. So epidemiology is that course of work, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things. How we did it during COVID, there was special requirements that were being pushed down to health departments from the state, from the feds, from everyone else on further patient tracking and contact tracing and a lot of the different things that we do those things, but to the level that we were doing them during COVID, we've learned a lot of what we shouldn't have done during a pandemic.
Thank you.
That's a good question, Vanessa. Thank you, Jim, for those answers. Anything else for Jimmy?
Yeah. So since you're here, this doesn't really have to do with your quarterly report, but I know I sound like a broken record, but one of the reasons, there are several reasons, but one of the reasons we have such high property taxes in Leavenworth County is because we are 56% property tax exempt. So that means only 44% of us are paying all the bills. The biggest reason out of all the reasons are we don't get a $30 million a year pilot check from the federal government. If it was a DOI facility, Fort Leavenworth, we'd be getting $30 million a year. But since it's a
payment in lieu of taxes.
Payment in lieu of taxes, because they know that a community can't survive without property taxes, especially the way Kansas is set up. So if it was a DOI facility, we would get about $30 million a year pilot check. But we don't get that because it's a DOD facility. They don't pay those. So I've been working on that. They're wanting to change that in D.C. They don't understand why they pay DOIs, but they don't pay DODs. So they're working on that. It's going to take a while. But what I found out across the country is a lot of communities have the same problem. And one of the ways they addressed it was dealing with smaller MOUs, one thing at a time. So, for instance, it costs Leavenworth County taxpayers about $2 million a year to keep our ambulance service. Total cost is around $8 million. We get reimbursed about $6 million through insurance coverages, but there's still about $2 million that's not covered. So me and you are paying $2 million a year out of our property taxes to keep our AMS service. Fort Leavenworth had an MOU with us that expires this September 1st. I reached out to them, talked to General Beagle, and he put together a task force. We've been talking back and forth, and they understand and they agree. They were under this MOU using our ambulance service that it's costing us $2 million for our local taxpayers to keep for zero money. They weren't paying anything. They're still not paying anything, but they're using our ambulance service. So in light of the $30 million pilot check we're not getting, I don't expect to get the whole $30 million for the ambulance service. But where I'm at on this is it cost us $2 million. They're the other big brother in this situation. In my family, the big brother pays half the bills. So we're asking them to split this difference with us. So we're asking for $1 million. It's not a direct relation to the number of calls we make on the fort. This has to do with keeping our ambulance service, period. So in dealing with this task force, some of the numbers have been thrown around, and they said, well, we're checking with Fort Riley. So we checked with Fort Riley. They did this. They had a MOU with the county for the ambulance service. They thought they could do it cheaper. The Riley County said the same thing. They're like, we need you guys to pay something. They said, well, we just won't pay you guys. We'll just get our own. They're paying $6 million a year to keep their own ambulance service.
Yeah, I talked to the commissioner yesterday about that, yeah.
So my theory in this is if you can do it for less than $1 million, it's not going to hurt us to cut the fort out. It will save us money. It'll save our taxpayers money. So if they can do it cheaper, then they could get their own ambulance service. But I don't want to do that. I think we've got a situation set up here that's completely workable. We just have to figure out a way to compensate our local taxpayers for the $2 million loss every year with one of the biggest users that is also using it for zero now. So the task force that I'm dealing with now, the next thing they've asked for is they just want some figures on the $2 million that it's costing us a year. So if I could have a consensus of the board to get staff to put together some figures for the $2 million that I can go back to that committee with and show them where we're coming up with these numbers.
Years ago, I think so, when he promised that.
Okay. And that's all I need is just some numbers to show them this is where we come up with that $2 million figure.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Culbertson, what would you envision would be the impact to Leavenworth County if Fort Leavenworth moved out?
If they moved out, so are you saying they're going to move out if we don't have them help pay for the ambulance service?
I know that some people have asked me that in response to this line of conversation, so I thought we should discuss it.
Okay, so let's discuss it. I don't think they're going to move out for helping pay for the ambulance service that they're using and not paying for now.
Okay. I would say that I just want to make sure that we're very careful because it would make a large impact to Leavenworth County if we didn't have Fort Leavenworth.
I understand that completely.
Okay, thank you so much.
But they also create an economic obsolescence on the county budget. If you understand exactly how taxes work, the difference between income tax, sales tax, and property tax, the fort is an economic obsolescence on the county budget.
I just want to make sure we're taking into consideration as well all of the ways that they pay into Leavenworth County.
All the what that they pay?
The contributions.
How do they pay into the county budget?
Well, if you consider how many people live in Leavenworth County just because Fort Leavenworth is here, you know, how many people shop in our stores.
That's zero property tax.
Right, but I mean, just overall impact that
To the county budget. That's what and that's exactly the misnomer that I'm trying to get people to understand. The fort being there pays zero property tax. They have jobs, so they pay income tax, and they spend money in the community, so they pay sales tax. How much income tax and sales tax does the county budget get? Zero. Very little sales tax, but zero income tax. So that's the problem I'm trying to get everybody to understand. That is exactly the way of thinking that's got us into these high property taxes that we have. We have all agreed to pay higher property tax so we can have the fort here. Exactly what you just said. For the convenience or the necessity or whatever you want to call it for having the fort here, we have all agreed to pay higher property taxes, but somehow we forgot that. Somehow people that are coming and complaining to us about high property taxes, they forgot that to have the fort here, you agreed to pay their share of property taxes because they're not paying
that
it.
live off Fort, there's property tax coming to the county, correct?
Sure.
So that's the argument I was making. Obviously, I believe that there's tax being collected when someone comes off Fort and eats at a restaurant, those kind of ways. I just think we need to take into consideration.
But that's sales tax. That doesn't go to the county budget.
Right.
But there are way more people that work on Fort that don't live in Leavenworth County.
But it does go to the state.
That are
using
toll it.
Say that again.
It does go to the state.
Toll the bridge.
I didn't hear what you said.
She says it does go to the state.
What's that?
Sales tax.
Tax.
Yeah, but there are way more people that work on Fort Leavenworth that don't live in the county than do live here. So they're using our roads and bridges. Those people are using our roads and bridges to get to the fort. They're not paying anything for them. They're not paying any property tax.
I just don't want to get in a position where we have an adversarial relationship.
Yeah.
You know, like you owe us, and they're saying, but look at all these contributions we make, and we're just in this back and forth. So I want to be really careful about how we go about having the conversations to try to make sure that it's a solid agreement that we can stay together, because I think the relationship between the county and the fort is really crucial.
I agree 100%, and that's why I've met with this task force to talk about this before the deadline on the MOU is up in September 1st, because I didn't want to just say, hey, we're not providing ambulance service for you guys anymore. We're giving them an opportunity to help us fix our problem. We have to come up with $2 million a year. Can you help us do that since you're also using the ambulance service? This task force has been very, very agreeable. So,
Commissioner Colson, aren't they in agreement that they should be paying something for it?
Absolutely. And it's just to come up with a dollar amount.
Not all of Fort Leavenworth is in agreement that they owe Leavenworth County for it.
For the ambulance service?
Yeah.
They think they should still use it without paying anything?
Kind of a benefit for Fort Leavenworth being in Leavenworth County.
So it's okay to have, and that's fine and that's fine to have that train of thought as long as you agree to pay higher property tax. It's that simple.
Okay,
that way of thinking is that simple.
Go ahead. Mike's trying.
So a couple things on this. We've been working on this for
a year and a half. Oh, the EMS thing.
Well, the pill.
Pilot check?
The pill.
6 years.
Yeah, long time. But there's been a change on Fort Leavenworth, and they now have Michael's Housing,
Right.
which they're housing civilians, and they're not paying property taxes.
That part does not make sense to me.
And then we have businesses located on the base. So this is a change. So when people are saying, well, we don't want to make it so the base goes away, but the fact is things have changed, and the change is that the Michael's Housing and the businesses on the base that are impacting Leavenworth County directly in terms of property tax and ad valorem taxes. So that's one point. And the other thing is, we all love the base. Everybody loves the base. We're pro-military. This is a military community, and we want to keep our base. Kansas wants to keep that base. But I don't think that base is going anywhere.
And I do not want to sound like I don't appreciate the base being here. I was born and raised here. I know the fort, if the fort wasn't here, Leavenworth City and Leavenworth County wouldn't be what we are today. I totally get that. But the problem is the system the state handed us, the county, to pay our bills with is property tax, period. The $30 million that we're not getting from the fort, I don't remember the fort calling us when they allowed Michael's Housing to compete with our local landlords
Would
for
it be
free.
possible for us to invite them to a conversation on that? Because
We've been doing that for 6 years. And I don't remember the fort reaching out to us when they allowed their housing to be open to the public to ask any of the local landlords if that was okay. So this back and forth you're talking about, keeping them in good graces,
Yeah.
it works both ways.
Because I would like to see us, maybe the commissioners go on Fort and if they'll let us come and talk to them about it. But
Vanessa, you make a good point. We're getting ready to start.
Meet with later, and we've done all that.
We're getting ready. We're getting ready to start. I think we bring some more to the attention of everybody. I think we're getting ready to start meetings with Leavenworth and like that. Maybe this is just another group, another entity that we should sit down at a table together, eyeball to eyeball,
That
so
would
we
be
can
great,
talk
yeah.
this out, and then maybe we can get some. Sometimes it takes those to get things moving. Jeff's done a fantastic job trying to get them, and we love the Post. I'm an Army brat.
Right.
I mean, we love the
I'm
Post.
not calling you a brat, but
Well, I am, but we got to maybe move it a step further, and I think Jeff's been, I wouldn't say frustrated, but he's been working on this hard. So maybe we could set up a time for them to come here. We go there, probably come here because there'll have to be a meeting, and have a conversation with them and just talk about some things and maybe just become a better partner.
because I'd love to hear their side of that.
That's what I'm saying about better partner.
And make sure we have all the information, so we're not just like, they changed this, but we can't fairly explain why. I don't think until we have that communication.
Everybody okay with that?
Thank you.
Maybe we can get a meeting set up, Mark. Think about that. Okay, EMS. Oh, we just did that. Health Department. You guys got me rattled. Health Department.
Again, Commissioners presented written report. Again, highlights the budget. We're on track with our budgetary expenditures. I will highlight again, user fee collection is fluctuatory throughout the year at the Health Department because of majority of our collections for revenue and user fee is immunizations per school year and such. So we see a lot of our revenue come in towards the summertime and fall semester, and that's where we will collect our user fees. Grants, we've collected grants as appropriate for the first quarter. We have submitted our aid to local grants, as I was here last month, getting that signed in, and we'll be receiving back awards probably late May, early June, as they're processing through as well at the state level as to what's going to be awarded or not. We had a WIC audit occur in March. Very proud of the WIC staff. No deficiencies. They're very impressed with our WIC department And they've actually even noted that if they have other agencies throughout the state that are having problems with WIC, they're going to send them up here to kind of shadow or look at how Jody's doing with our WIC department. One of the big things I want to talk about that I'll be working through currently, we do have a workforce development grant. In that workforce development grant, there's very specific items that it can be used for, or items that it can be used for. Electronic health record software is, lack of better terms, how you check somebody in at the front, how you keep all their personal health information and records, or if they get immunizations or any of those type of things. We have a system out there that's very antiquated, very old. It was the state system back in the day. There's literally about 3 or 4 counties left in the state of Kansas that are operating on it, and we're one of them. It's, lack of better terms, a mom and pop type shop out of Wichita that's running this software. And I'm kind of in fear that someday they're going to either retire, there's going to be no support, and we're going to be in a predicament that we won't have the funds to be able to spend $100,000 on a contract to switch our EHR over. This workforce development grant will pay for that. We've looked at the vendors and what vendors are out. Johnson County has Patagonia, which is what we've looked at, and we were able to kind of negotiate back and forth. And what it appears as of right now, workforce development has preliminary signed off on that they will fund 5 years for that for us running. It's a software, obviously, that is cloud-based, internet-based, so we don't have to host servers or any of those type of things, but they would pay the 5-year support on that, which we pay annually as it is right now for our current obsolete software. I have the contracts. I'll be working with legal through those contracts to make sure everything is on the up and up, and then I'll be back in front of the board to present that. I just wanted to kind of give that work is happening in the.
I didn't realize that's the way it was operating. Okay.
So that's pretty much health department in a nutshell. Is there any questions?
I have 2 or 3 questions. First of all, how many are you still tracking your COVID numbers, and what is the current recommendation for COVID shots and boosters?
We do not provide COVID shots or boosters out the health department. When that all, lack of better terms, went commercial to pharmacies and such, the cost of those was not something when we weren't given the vaccines for free and such. So we don't provide COVID vaccines at the health department at all. The tracking of COVID went away. That is nothing that it's not a reportable that we are tracking or any of those type of numbers, and that's been since end of 2023.
And what about influenza?
Influenza-like illness is only tracked out of ER visits and hospital base into the system.
And is that tracked locally, or is that tracked from Topeka?
It's Topeka in the state.
Okay. So that's ironic that we were so focused on tracking those things, and now we don't even offer the shot.
And Commissioner, I made that decision when a vaccine is $126. I didn't think the taxpayer wanted to buy that, for fear of not being reimbursed.
Well,
I appreciate that.
And when you're having to follow up with a booster, is the booster also $125?
Well, that's what you're into now is boosters.
Yeah.
Not into initials. But I made that determination that was not we're not going to spend taxpayer money on something where they can go to any pharmacy. If they truly want insurance, that, it can be sought somewhere else.
Yeah. And has there been any health information put down from the state or the feds on the adverse effects like heart problems for adolescents?
That's out of VEERS, Commissioner, and that information you can do the research on it, but it's not really been pushed out to on the health department side, because that's not our side of the follow up, if you will. So
you don't get information provided to you on that. Last time you were here, we talked about family planning, and I got the numbers. We had 207 that service was provided to. 23 of those were minors. And my question this time on that is the minors, that are referenced are they provided contraception with or without parental consent?
That is, they can be provided without parental consent on that, and that is the Title X guidelines. We at the health department try to encourage parental involvement, guardian involvement, any sort of, and I can't present the numbers of how many of those actually were without parental consent.
So sometimes in the county we're having school nurses referencing folks over to the health department. They're getting contraception without parental consent.
Correct. They can do that.
Okay. I think that's important for the folks to understand. I personally think that's not a role for government. So thank you.
Are you able to legally provide those numbers to us?
I would have to research that, Commissioner.
If that's allowable, I would like for you to report back to us with the numbers of ones that did or did not involve parental engagement. And then, is this strictly going through the school district, or is it a mix of school nurse and outside?
Yeah, and we're obviously at the health department, we're an open, so again, if somebody is seeking family planning services, they can show up and we go through that process with them.
So how much is a school staff member involved in that process?
We actually, on Friday, have our school nursing meeting, and we go over everything with them, not just family planning. Obviously, we go over immunizations, we go over teen pregnancy, all those type of things, that if we have any of those high liability individuals in our community that need to be under that umbrella, then we bring them in. We even get resource. We are a resource to Sparrow Clinic. So if they go to Sparrow Clinic and Sparrow Clinic can't provide all the resources, we get the referral from Sparrow Clinic.
So if a school has a policy for their school nurse as far as what the directive would be for how minors should be handled, those school nurses are underneath that policy.
Right.
But if the school doesn't have a policy on that, then the school nurses are free to make these referrals.
Correct. And you have to understand, a referral is still only to the individual. So the school nurse isn't putting them in a vehicle and taking them and bringing them to our vehicle. It's a resource just like any other resource that's provided. Sparrow Clinic's given to individuals out at schools and such as a resource to clients that are potentially in the community that needs those resources. So we are a resource to the schools when a school needs an individual that may be in front of them that has come to them with an issue, a problem, or something. Then they can pick up that phone and say, "Hey, we're sending this individual over." That's it. The school's done with that individual at that point in time, and then they fall underneath the policies and procedures that we go through with them.
So the Title X requirements would require you to make the reference without parental notification or consent.
Correct.
That's part of the requirements of the grant.
Correct.
And that's probably the same exact thing that the schools are bound to as well.
So the follow-up to that is I know Miami County pulled out of the Title X because of this very issue.
So that would be an action on the behalf of Leavenworth County.
Yes.
Right. And if you remember, Commissioners, that's also we're a $120,000 grant for under that program. And that program funds those nurses to be there, not just for family planning and such. So again, loss of that program and Title X program would not just be effective to losing that. There would be other programs that we would have to lose because we would lose personnel. By how much?
We would have to fund them.
Correct. Or we would have to take on that funding.
It's just the fact that the federal government is pushing these. Don't think there's not an agenda behind this.
And again, I think our numbers state pretty well in there that out of the, just because there's 20-something, a majority of them have their parents with them.
So, and that's good. We want that.
We push
and
that.
we want you to work with Sparrow Clinic, and we want you to do these things. But then when we're looking at public policy, we have to. It's good to get this out in the open that this is what's being pushed down from the federal government.
What age would you say is the youngest that you provide the family planning to?
I don't have that number, but probably around 15, 16, somewhere in there. I would think maybe a 14-year-old may have been in there at some point, but I doubt it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Good question.
Yes, I have a question. I'm hearing a lot about measles. Is there any concern that's going on in your department about how
we are monitoring that and where the measles cases. Majority of all of those measles cases currently are Southwest Kansas, and again, there is no measles cases up in this. Outside of, on the Missouri side, I believe it was Jackson County just last week, I think, announced one measles case. But there are no others. So I'm monitoring that whole, we believe it's slowing down. Again, it takes 2 weeks post last case before they can say that it's under control and such. So every week they put out new information. The state of Kansas has a whole spot on their website that has all the information with that. And then we also, the biggest thing with measles is prevention, and that is the immunization, and we do provide that both child and adult.
How many cases does it take for us to take heed to say, okay, we need to start doing something?
Again, currently, because measles is a big topic right at the moment, if one measles case is in, if we can identify that it was because of travel or they were in an area and that was back up here, it's not going to be anything that's going to be dramatic to us. If we start to have a spread because of a case is here and then we have multiplications from that case here, again, that kind of goes along with the patient tracking and such, then we would have concern that we have spread of measles in our area.
Okay.
And what would be, what could you do? I mean,
again, unfortunately, the biggest thing is containment, notifications, things of that nature, trying to, when the individuals are in the spread stage of it, is to keep them obviously not necessarily quarantined away, but they need to be away from other individuals so we don't have a large outbreak of measles. Majority of the measles cases, again, that have been in the Kansas and in all the states that were unvaccinated individuals that because it's easy spread at that point in time.
So make sure you have your measles vaccination.
Are people afraid? I mean, I've seen the numbers on, like, in 1970 there were like 9 childhood vaccinations, and then it's just proliferated. Do you think that proliferation has caused people to be afraid of vaccinations? Why do we have people not getting vaccinated for their childhood, these diseases that are so, this is the basics, tuberculosis, measles, why are we having people, because I think there's a crossover on, they're afraid of these, but they're not realizing these are important.
Commissioner, I don't have the answers to, but there's obviously two sides of the street on a lot of topics anymore. And you have the anti-vaxxers, and you have the full vaccine individuals, and there's the mix in the middle. Again, we try to do what we can do for education, and we have immunization nurses, and we push out, hey, this is why it's important to give all the information that's out. There's enough information out there. Again, I've heard Commissioner Cullerson say it a lot. If people do their homework and understand, just as you just presented some numbers and such, you can do your own homework and see that immunizations have eliminated some of these very deadly and morbidity-type diseases out there.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it just seems like we need to get back to the childhood vaccinations and really focus on those, and maybe not focus on the proliferation of.
You got one of the big scars on your arm?
Yeah.
Vanessa, do you have
tuberculosis?
All of them.
Yeah, they have put them all in.
Vanessa, do you have one more question?
I just wanted to say, does the health department provide this vaccination?
This is what, I'm sorry?
Measles.
Measles, yes.
And what age can receive it?
We provide, you can get, if you've never been vaccinated, you can get vaccinated all the way up until adult ages and such. So, and we have vaccine for all ages.
So have we put anything out, or do you think that would, okay.
Yeah. It's
So I'll try and help
website,
share that.
Yeah, it's website, Facebook. I mean, we've put out a
Thank
number
you.
of.
Okay.
So I just want to express appreciation for everything you do out there at the health department. I know sometimes you come here and you get hammered with some hard questions, but appreciate the role you're playing and what you're doing for public health and the community. Thank you.
Jamie,
Thank you, Jamie.
You only get hit those hard questions from Commissioner over here, but we appreciate it. And I echo what Mike's saying. Y'all do a lot out there. I've been out there quite a few times just to see you. Your staff's amazing. Thank you for coming out today. We're going to go with Commissioner's report. I start. Only thing I had to report is Commissioner Dove and I attended the Kansas County Commissioner Association last couple of days, and I can assure you one of the most important parts to me, Willie, I don't know if it was you, is when our lobbyists and people talk about what the legislators have done and some things that have come up that I wasn't aware of that went through and what's supposed to be coming up next year and why the reasons they think they didn't do it. But I thought that part was pretty interesting, and that's all I have. Mr. Dove, you have anything?
Yeah, that part was pretty interesting, especially when they've started counting the 90 days from actual calendar days to working days.
When they cut it back, yeah.
And bring a bill before the Senate for property taxes was just completely ignored.
Yeah.
To the fact. And when they started to, I wasn't aware of this, when the House started to put something together, they got to a certain point and they realized at the last day that they didn't have enough time to get into property taxes. So
number one issue.
Number one issue. And myself, before the season started, I contacted legislators and said, "This is what's coming up. We would like to see this done." And it appears on deaf ears. So the next thing we have to do is, I think, contact some legislators and talk to them about it. And on my way home, I did call a couple of people who aren't there now, and they said, "Well, I didn't know that really happened." I said, "Oh, yes, it did. It did happen."
It did.
So
That's a couple surprises.
yeah. So it's not like it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
anything else, Mr. Vanessa? You have anything for us?
I just want to thank the cities, Leavenworth, Tanaxi, Lansing, Baser, for meeting with me. It was great to learn more about the individual cities in Leavenworth County. We have quite a spread of how things are going, so it was good for me to find out more.
And you know something else, too, you bring up a good point. Not only that, because I get a chance to talk to them all the time, too, is how each city looks at something maybe a little different and how they're trying to handle it. But that's why we're going to have these meetings, whenever we can share, not just your district, you can go out to any other area, talk to the people. It's always a good thing. So I heard about that. I'm glad you did that. Anything else? Jeff, you got anything for us?
I don't have anything this week.
Mike?
Went to the MARC meeting, and they approved the one for Leavenworth County. We approved the Baser grant that goes towards they're going to build a network of trails in connection with 155th Street.
We talked about that.
So that was approved by MARC. KCATA meeting, had a committee meeting last week. We approved a reserve fund policy, and the meeting's today at noon. And then I have a meeting with the LCDC this afternoon.
Get that under control, Mike.
So there we go. Lots of meetings.
Yeah, okay. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
I